I guess the question is, will the cameras cut to Taylor Swift during
they
the Usher performance?
Of course they will.
Usher is a sideshow. Like the people would rather see Taylor standing in her suite looking at whatever she's looking at than see Usher.
Hi, Morans.
Oh my gosh, we're in person.
We're in person. We're together.
It happened.
Look.
It turns out we know each other. Shazam! We're
Shazam.
here. We're here.
And what is Sam wearing?
Well,
let's not talk about that. Let's get into. I think we should say it's not just us this year.
Well, first, welcome to another episode of More or Less. As promised, we're bringing this episode to you from a conference on the slopes of the Jackson Hole Ski Mountain, a conference called Lessinfest, and we'll just leave it at that for now. But we are very excited for the episode this week. We have a lot to cover in tech news, and we have some special guests. So without further ado, special guests will play on the music.
We'd like to introduce one individually.
Okay, first we have creator, filmmaker, wearer of sunglasses, Casey Neistat.
Welcome.
12.5 million YouTube followers.
Thanks, good to see you guys.
So this is our
Happy to be
fifth
back.
wheel. And today we actually also have a sixth wheel.
Welcome, Ricky Van Veen.
Oh,
Check that out. Thanks for joining us, guys.
If I could just paint a picture for the listeners at home that don't have the optional video feed, we're sitting in the corner of a hotel room. We have two microphones, none of which are pointed at our mouths. We're using the house lights as lights, and we have 6 chocolate-covered strawberries on the table.
Is this insulting to you as a filmmaker? This late?
It hurts me so much.
It hurts you so
Can I point out
much.
that the 6 strawberries are for the 6 of us? It's
Really?
kind of a
That is-
perfect thing.
that's-
Yeah. When you're a guest on our show, we treat you like
Clearly.
royalty.
Royalty. Well, thank you for that scene setting, Casey.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for being here. I know you're avid listeners and fans of
Well,
the pod.
I actually have a question for you guys, if I may.
You may.
Please.
You may.
Because
Yeah.
I've been wondering this. Which came first? The title of the podcast or the idea to do a podcast? Like, were you like, we have such a great title, we have to do a podcast?
It's definitely the title.
Yeah.
It's totally a
ding,
title.
ding, ding.
Okay, because I wonder this because a lot of times, like when I used to read movie scripts, like one time I read a script called Sweet Child of Mine. And the plot was a baby was conceived at a Guns N' Roses concert and they need to find the dad or whatever. And I was like, oh, this was like a title. And then they're like, oh, let's make a movie. We got a great title. And I thought the same thing about your podcast. There's another story about titles that I always think of, which is, I don't think it's apocryphal, but it's a piece of Hollywood history, that The Hangover was passed on by a studio because they couldn't get the title What Happens in Vegas, which was an Ashton Kutcher movie. Came out like a year later. So titles are so important. And I think this is such a great title. You would be fools to not do a podcast.
What do you think about the title Less is More?
I don't like it.
Okay.
Mm.
So we're sticking with the correct.
Yeah, because this isn't less is more. This is more or less. Like
It's a debate.
It's a choice.
It's a premise. It's a title and a premise.
It is.
Yeah.
And we definitely stick to the premise in 100% of our episodes. Very consistently.
Yes.
Okay. So, to all of you out there, we are going to spend the bulk of our pod today talking about something both these guests are experts in, which is the future of
Wait. We just had someone knock at the door.
The seventh wheel is here. And more strawberries
Please be room
or
service. Please be room service.
MrBeast is here. Oh,
Was
It
that
was
the
just
was that a
nice.
turn down service? We should have had them in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Should we bring her on?
Yeah.
Yeah, tell her about her. You can
I think she might. Yeah.
we need to get her to like sign a waiver.
Okay,
That's what we were
there
talking
go.
about?
I was talking about what we're going to do today. I like to give people a roadmap. One of the points of feedback is that people want a little more of a roadmap. So we're going to chat a little bit about some of the big headlines in the news. And then we are going to get into the future of creators, celebrity, fame in this moment. We can talk about AI or not. And of course, our bridge to this is, of course, the Super Bowl and Taylor and Travis. So I will connect those things as a preview. But what we really want to tap these two brains on is a theme we come to time and again in this podcast, which is how is the world of creators changing? How is the world of media changing? And what, like, both as consumers of that information, but we have a lot of creators who listen to this pod too. What is working in this moment? What are the strategies?
Or people that invest in creators.
That sounds fantastic.
That sounds fantastic. Yeah. Great. Would you have liked me to email that to you before
No,
this
absolutely
moment?
not. I think there's a real lack of spontaneity in the podcasting space.
Yes.
It's always welcome to keep things fresh, spicy.
Okay. Well.
All right. So what happened in the tech world, Jess?
What happened in the tech world this week? Well, we had a big decision related to in the Muskverse that Tesla shareholders sued Elon Musk over his pay package. And the Delaware court said, you're right, shareholders. You, Elon Musk, cannot make that much money. The company has not adequately defended that level of comp. So I think this is kind of interesting because we've been tracking Power of Musk Inc. for some time. And I don't know what you guys think. Is this a sign that there's some like chinks in the armor, or, are we still going to be talking about Elon Musk?
Well, I think two things can be true at the same time. One is that there's no question that basically it was pretty incestuous board decision, right? And the independence of the directors, et cetera, is pretty obviously a challenge, and especially when you're giving someone a $50 billion pay package. Two, I think this is the other interesting part. My bet is that if you told Tesla shareholders that you're right, too much money, let's go back to that decision point. Would you like Elon for $50 billion or not Elon for $50 billion? That if they just had to replay it, they'd say, sure, give Elon $50 billion. This thing's appreciated dramatically. It's just a small tip off the top, and I'd rather lock it in and make it happen. So it's a hard one, right? Because I think it's a ridiculous. The process was clearly broken, and clearly it was an inside deal. But on the flip side, I think if you ask most shareholders, it's actually been fine for them. It's good for them.
Well, there's some shareholders who were.
Well, yeah, but there's shareholders will sue about anything, right? Someone's going to come up with a lawsuit for anything, right? It doesn't. I actually think, again, if you did the counterfactual and you said, we go back to the date, would you like Elon in? It's going to cost you $50 billion. Or, you know what, you're right, that is too much money. Let him leave and let's just see how this plays out. They'd say, no, we'll take Elon based on.
I thought you were going to tie it to your favorite theme of governance and how.
Oh, governance, yes, that is my favorite theme.
Yeah,
governance is fun.
Was this a nonprofit board that was overseeing the corporate board?
Well, no, I just think that's as you guys know, that's the theme of the year. It's Harvard, it's OpenAI, it's FTX. I think it's even, absolutely.
But it hasn't come for Elon yet in a big way. So I guess that is the question.
Should we ask our guests
when was the comp package initially agreed upon?
A while ago, I believe. Unless, we'll check. Let's check.
We can do that using the internet for that.
This is good.
I believe it's 2018.
Yeah. Thank you.
Then, I couldn't agree with you more. It's like he fucking delivered. What do you want?
Yeah, or it's even not only that he delivered, it's like, would you, if you played it again, take the risk of him not being there and see what happens?
Right. Could anybody else have executed in the same?
The answer is maybe someone could have executed the same or better, right? There's a lot of Elon show that might not.
Don't you think Elon would
you
have
take the risk?
Stayed in the game at 40 billion? I mean,
who knows?
What do you think he would have stayed in the game at 30 billion?
Well, I just think that the question in my mind is on the flip side is if wouldn't the same shareholders sue about 30 billion or 40 billion? It doesn't it's just a large, ridiculous number. It's not it's a large number. I bet you could sue over 10 billion. They're all ridiculous numbers, right? The question is you want the guy in or you want the guy not in?
Does this give precedent to other CEOs of his stature that are going to do this as well?
This is a good question.
And how many startups aren't going to incorporate in Delaware going forward?
Well, that's it'll be Nevada or Texas.
Yeah. I don't know.
Is what that's what Elon's pushing. And if you're a startup founder, you follow Elon, and you have the choice, maybe you'll do that. Yeah, I think as I'm not an expert on this, but as I understand the story, it's less about the number and more about the process of approving the number. So I think if you're a CEO right now and you're doing a comp package, you probably want to make sure that is completely buttoned up according to the Delaware Chancery Court or whatever. That's probably gonna be the biggest impact.
Yeah, and I will say it is funny. Delaware keeps fucking Elon, right? Delaware is why he had to do the Twitter thing.
Right, they sued him into buying the company.
But on the flip side, it's because Delaware is the most robust corporate governance. Like that's like the whole point of Delaware, right? So like it is, on one hand, it's kind of funny that the state of Delaware keeps fucking Elon. And on the other hand, it's like obvious because Elon keeps playing with the lines of extremism around corporate governance, and they're like the last line of legitimate defense.
Yeah. Okay. We can say watch this space because I think it's going to be interesting, and these are the right questions. One more headline before we go deep. Amazon, after trying to buy a Roomba, iRobot, the maker of a portable.
We own Roomba.
How would you describe it? Vacuum cleaner doesn't do it justice.
Robot vacuum.
It's a robot vacuum, and they have a robot mop too, by the way. We invested in these heavily during COVID.
That's undersold. So just decided amid a lot of scrutiny from the EU and, according to the information, the FTC in the US, they said, no, thank you. We will not buy this vacuum company. I don't think this matters one iota to Amazon, but obviously it kicked off a big wave of how can we do business in a world where...
Well, and Roomba is just not a good business to lay off.
Yeah, I don't know. But following Adobe and Figma breaking up, obviously, I think Aaron Levy on Twitter or someone basically said the point, like there just is no, everyone's made this point. He said it pithier, but like there's just no ability to do any acquisitions, period. What do we think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is going to increase, just throws even more cold water on the acquisition ecosystem. I mean, across the entire venture capital ecosystem, I think this is just not great for innovation. I think there's going to be entire categories where people are going to be asking questions whether they should even start companies. And that seems really suboptimal.
Maybe.
So the third major thing that happened over the last week, of course, was that with the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers, thanks for the hat, Dave, headed to the Super Bowl, we have Taylor Swift in her first year in the NFL going to the Super Bowl. So this is huge.
But if I may be so bold, I think the real winner of the Super Bowl 2024 is going to be Usher.
No.
And here's why. Halftime performer. He's got the most eyeballs ever on him. He's got the suburban moms and their teenage daughters watching the game who otherwise didn't care about football, but then maybe the mom remembers she actually liked Usher in like the late 90s, early 2000s. He has a renaissance, and this like sets off his career for the next few years.
But okay, I'll take the counter. The base case is that people watch the halftime show of the Super Bowl, right? Everybody's kind of like milling around, maybe get some chips, whatever, but everyone watches it. So he would already have that without Taylor Swift. With Taylor Swift, he is now the second most important musician in the stadium
Almost
that day.
not. He's probably like the 10th most important.
But it's like, it takes away, like he's a great artist. He's like, and people are going to be focused on like, I guess the question is, will the cameras cut to Taylor Swift during the Usher performance?
Of course they will.
Usher is a sideshow. Like the people would rather see Taylor standing in her suite looking at whatever she's looking at than see Usher. Like while Usher is performing, people will be like, please cut to Taylor. Please cut to Taylor. And if they cut to her and she's on Instagram, it's just not a great look.
What
for
if
Usher.
they do a deal and she does a little impromptu appearance?
Yeah, if she shows up on stage with
No
Usher.
way.
No
No
way.
chance.
No
She'd never
way.
do that.
Of course she'd never do that. I'm just, we're spitballing here. We're trying to save Usher's career.
So, Ricky, you have views also on like what this moment means for pop culture more broadly.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking earlier. It's like, it's the Super Bowl of Super Bowls, quite literally. I think it's like maybe the biggest pop culture event in a decade or two. And I think Taylor Swift has achieved this like cultural escape velocity where she's so, and we all know how big she is. Like she's the biggest thing, but she's so big that the bigness is an attraction in itself, which makes her bigger. And
she's basically a black hole. Like a black hole of pop culture.
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
Yeah, good analogies there.
Casey, what do you think? Like when you watch what's happening?
I mean, I think that the spectacle of Taylor Swift is unlike anything I've ever seen in my life as someone who pays attention. And I was at the Bills game and I was in the suite next to her. And it was unbelievable. I think the most remarkable thing I saw was there were more signs in the audience that said Taylor or cutouts of Taylor Swift than there were for any other athlete or either team.
Wow.
Did they take seats and like unscrew them and flip them around for people?
So people tried to So to get a little granular, Taylor had her security team obviously blocking the insides. You can get, and then on the outside, it's these big glass windows. And then she had her security team, but the crowd got so big that it became the sheriff's department had to come and create sort of this crescent shape around it because there were that many spectators with their backs to the game just looking at her, looking at the game.
This is kind of crazy.
It was wild.
I think it's
and it was freezing too, right?
There's this joke in the San Francisco 49ers stadium about like there's this like special suite that's really expensive that's always empty, and it's like an embarrassment that like in the 50-yard line, like the seats in the best games are always empty because like really rich people who don't actually show up. It's like the only thing worse for like morale than having a bunch of empty seats in the middle is like if people are actually like at the game and looking into the stands.
Right.
So I have there's like logistics questions, like how is this, not that you guys are experts in security, but like, how do we think this will play out? Is they're going to have to like carve off a piece of the...
I mean, I think the Super Bowl is so used to having every famous person. I don't think that's the issue.
Okay.
I think they're used to that.
The issue is like how much TV time do they give her?
Right.
And that is negotiated ahead of time. There's no way there's an operator in the control room being like, and camera 3, and to Taylor, 3, 2, back to the game. Like, there's no way.
Is that really pre-negotiated by who? Like, her Taylor's team is like...
No.
I bet she's not involved. No. I bet it's the producers of the game. They're like, how much of her do we want to show?
I saw somebody did an analysis, and of the 5 hours of football in the playoffs, they only showed Taylor for 109 seconds or something like that.
Yeah.
Which is, given the scale of how strong everybody's reacted to this. It's
Can
just
you
so
bet on like how many seconds of airtime she gets? Like, this seems like a real opportunity.
What's the over under?
It's like or like how many times like you're going to be cut to her 3 times in the third quarter, right?
I guarantee you.
There's got to be a market.
I bet the Swifties have a poll. I'm going to find it and I'll send it. We'll put it in the show notes.
I want like I think if you really want to make the biggest thing
not a
ever,
poll. I meant the
gambling
website. Sorry, I meant the website where you can gem on this, either for money or not for money.
What does it mean for football? Like, if we think of her as just the ultimate influencer here, we're among influencers. Like,
well,
what does this
our
mean?
friend Charles Porch was making the point that it's made football more international for the time being, at least. I think that's one effect.
I went to that Buffalo game with a prominent businessman, and it was me and a handful of professional NFL players. And that question came up in the car as we were waiting because we had to stop driving to the stadium because Taylor's motorcade was going by.
She has a motorcade?
Police motorcade, the whole thing. And the players, the 3 that I was with, they hate it. They hate it. They're diluting the sport. They're distracting from the sport. We're in this for the athleticism, for the sport itself, the competition, and she brings none of that. And the businessman who was in the car, he was like, it is the most brilliant, amazing. How can you possibly bring an entirely new demographic to a sport and do it overnight? And this Taylor Swift has done that.
Could not agree more. I think that it's probably arguable that since the brain injury problem that really diminished the NFL's brand, I think no single action has brought a larger new audience into the NFL, maybe in NFL history. I mean, so from the business case, like you just can't be down on it.
But what's in it for Taylor? Because like she's potentially adding billions of dollars to the NFL.
This conversation,
more or less, she wanted to get us to talk about more.
I mean,
Literally,
the first time ever we talked about Taylor Swift.
Our friendship bracelet.
Like, I people try to ascribe all these dark mode, and I don't think it's that.
I'm not saying it's dark.
No. But
if I go to the NFL, I'm like, hey, I'm going to make you a few $billion.
No, I think it's all positive upside for her in ways we can't imagine, but I don't think it's intentional on her part. And I don't want to imply that, but it is. She's not, I don't think she's doing it for that reason, but
if you can be as an individual, you can change the NFL. Like it's a shield. That is an immovable object. The NFL is this monster, this fucking untouchable monolith. And this girl comes in and completely changes it in one season.
I just like the idea of her going and being like, I drink your milkshake. And having some final move. She's like, now the NFL is mine.
Okay, well, let's zoom out. We can always come back to Taylor, but let's zoom out too.
Everything always comes back to Taylor. Let's just admit that.
But, okay, does this say something broader about influencers, celebrity in this moment? One of the questions I have is we are seeing the mega star, which is kind of like the opposite of a long tail of influencers, which we thought the internet was going to create and enable. and has created enabled. Is that dead? And is the future just more Taylor Swifts?
I think it's both. I think it's a barbell, right? I think the big get bigger, and then you have this long tail of people making a living for themselves, independent creators. We all know many. We're all sitting with one. So I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I think that, and I don't even know that there's a relationship between the two. I think that, what I'm seeing is sort of this fragmentation in the influencer, or the micro celebrity, or the YouTuber, or the social media star space. Whereas if you think back to 10 years ago, YouTube was sort of picking winners. And they quite literally put YouTubers up on billboards saying, this person, Tyler Oakley, represents us as a platform.
We worked there and did that work. Yeah. So I had the top 100 list and we did deals with them.
Yeah. I had one of those deals. Great deal. And
you're welcome.
I appreciate that. And I think that, and jump in, but like what it felt like was by picking winners, they're really siloing what this platform is. And as YouTube stopped being this niche thing and became this all-encompassing, just sort of tidal wave, this is where video lives on the internet, it was important that it become much more fragmented. So yeah, there are celebrities that bake pies. The best pie YouTuber is out there somewhere. And that person has a strong following.
And can do really well. Like that.
Very, very well. And that's the difference, is that 10 years ago, if you weren't one of those people at the top, you really couldn't. There was no middle class. And we're seeing now a middle class of celebrity, of influencer, of creator.
But is it even fair to call it the middle? I mean, this is the question I have, is like, I totally agree with the dumbbell effect. And I think you have the people that everyone knows and everyone follows and have hundreds of millions and like whatever. It's like becomes fodder. You can go to any bar or restaurant and talk about like, oh yeah, I know that person, we have something in common to talk about. And then there's your niche, more vertical, specific people. They might have a few million followers, even more. You want to call them the middle class, but like a lot of them are making like millions of dollars a year.
Yeah, I wouldn't call them the middle class, but yeah, I think that like you're able to identify your audience in a much more specific way. And I think that what people are doing is they're abandoning this idea of having to be the universal creator. Universal appeal is almost taboo. If everybody likes you, you're probably doing something wrong or you're just average.
So what's the Jimmy, like talk about Jimmy then, right? Because I think like you talk about universal appeal and creators, like again, he is not universal.
Wait, MrBeast, how many followers does he have now? 200 million, I think. Okay.
Like 250
just to ground people who don't know who Jimmy is.
I got one to bring it full circle. Every video he posts does more views than the Super Bowl will do this year with Taylor Swift. He will do more views with every video he posts.
And doesn't he reinvest most of the capital he earns from each video back into the next video?
Yeah, I mean,
not the next video. I mean, at this point, he can invest in a lot of other stuff too.
Yeah, but his whole enterprise,
a lot of money for video, like as much as a television show.
Much more, much more.
But again, he has more viewers than the Super Bowl. He's not spending on the Super Bowl.
How often does he make a video?
I think he's been cranking them lately, but I think like more than once a month, maybe once bi-weekly.
Seems like it's every 2 weeks. Yeah.
So I guess the question I was going to ask with him though, and you think about this, like that you don't have to appeal to everyone, is like he appeals to a huge number of people, right? And like, is that? I know there's a lot of aspiring MrBeasts in the world, right? And the question is like, is that a one of one? Is that a thing that is actually a path, or how do you think about that?
I think it looks like this. And Jimmy, if you're watching this, which would be amazing, forgive this comparison, but like McDonald's is a restaurant that you've never met someone in your life who hasn't eaten there, or at least knows of that restaurant. It is ubiquitous. It is everywhere. Like I go and my kids get that and I get like a fucking milkshake. It has something for everyone and it's everywhere. And there's still plenty of room for all of those other sort of franchisee restaurants that are also huge underneath that. And I think that that's what he's achieved, is he is that broad.
But it sounds like you're saying that's a bit of the older model.
No, I think that like we started this out by your barbell comparison and saying, there's the Taylor Swifts of the world. What does that mean for the rest of creators? And I think it just means they both get to exist.
Yeah.
But the prior didn't used to exist. There was no middle class. There was no such thing as a small creator that was actually viable. And that viability now is really strong.
Can I ask a question for both of you? I mean, Ricky, you are running partnerships for Meta.
Not running.
Sorry. You're in the partnerships team at Meta. I don't want to get anyone canceled here. And then, of course, Casey, as a creator, how has fandom shifted over the last few years? And is it headed and a direction you love as a creator? Like, is it more stalkerish than ever before?
I think it's gone more to communities. And I'll give an example, a media example that I know very well. So College Humor started 24 years ago, right?
Ricky started College Humor, for those of you who
this, and I have no economic interest in it. I'm just a proud papa type of role. This year will be more profitable than it's ever been in its life.
Wow.
And the reason is because Sam Reich, who has been running the business for the past few years, he said, I'm going to go narrow. I'm going to focus on a core group, and they're going to pay money because they're fans. Even though they can if they wanted to get a pirated video, they could. And the number of subscribers, I'm not going to say, would blow your mind. And they're paying, I think, like $6 a month or something like that for comedy video content. And what just happened was we were the biggest comedy brand in the world on YouTube and stuff. And we tried to appeal to everybody, and we had a big audience, but like we weren't as profitable as they are now. And it's interesting that this is happening. It doesn't happen that much in media, but there are people always cite the information. They cite Ben Thompson, and then they kind of run out of examples, But it's just to have another one that just like focus on your core and build a community. And a lot of people, it's like kind of like the public radio model. Like people will often pay just to say they're part of the club, right?
Even without the tote bag.
Even without the tote bag, they just want to say they're a supporter. So I think fandom is crystallizing like that.
Yeah, I would absolutely further that. I think a great example for me, one that's very close to home, is my older brother, who's 7 years, so he's 50, and he is one of the most brilliant artists I've ever experienced. But he's he is a very intellectual, very smart. He's 50 years old. He's not a kid sitting on the edge of his bed talking about gossip. And 5 years ago, we had this discussion. He wasn't sure where to take his career as an artist and as a filmmaker and as a sort of a thought leader. And I was like, become a YouTuber. And he's like, no. Are you fucking nuts? Like, I'm like an old, like I don't fit into that world. And I was like, no, there's an audience for you. Yeah. And as long as you don't stop, you will find that audience. And he is by, MrBeast, millions of subscribers. He has a very sort of, I think he has 500,000 subscribers, which is nothing to shake a stick at. But the living that he's able to make off of that 500,000 subscribers, he has a Patreon channel. Because his audience, which is primarily male-leaning Gen Xers, much older, they see him as this unique, entirely like standing alone on a pedestal intellect, like this voice that they relate to so well that they don't find anywhere else, that they want to support him in any way they can. And with tools like Patreon, he's able to embrace that and build around that. But I don't think that he could have found success 10 or 15 years ago. And I think that we're going to see more people like him into the future.
It's also, one analogy I always like to draw this is if you think about, forget making money for a second, but just like sense of purpose and meaning and like, who are you? Like sense of identity. I always say like, a generation ago, you could be the best basketball player in your local town. And that was a thing. You're like, I'm the basketball guy. And like, that's sweet. And like the problem with the internet and, social media, et cetera, is it opened up a world where you're like, oh my God, I'm actually not that good at basketball, right? And actually there's like a lot of people who are way better than basketball, and I can't be the local basketball guy in a physical space, right? And so that got blown away, and people were super sad because all of a sudden they're like, oh shit, like the thing that was my thing is not my thing anymore. And so what's ended up happening, and I think this is actually very healthy in a lot of ways, he's like, well, physical space or a community can't define my uniqueness and value anymore. Instead, it's going to have to be my voice is going to have to be have my audience. It might be geographically dispersed, but it's going to be. I can find exactly those people and just be me. Now, I think there are some liabilities to this, right? For society, right? Like you kind of need the Taylor Swifts that we can all agree on and like have some context to talk about with each other, et cetera. But I do think that like it's as much as it was sad that you can't be the best basketball player anymore, it is kind of the kind of recovery in my mind that people are finding ways to support themselves, their voices, and like kind of embracing that more and more.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about the other side of this, which I've noticed recently that a lot of very large YouTubers are actually quitting. There seems to be a trend in this, and I don't know if it's a self-perpetuating trend or what's going on.
Is it like a Selena Gomez quit? Because even I know about that.
No, it's like it's actually like some of these guys that are doing like big science videos. I noticed it because son really loves engineering videos and science videos, and there's some people that are, have big audiences in this realm, and they've just kind of said, like, this has gotten to be too much. Like, I can't produce the content at the speed that I need to keep up with the algorithm. And I don't know there seems to be a lot to unpack there. And I'm just curious, Casey, like what you think is going on.
Yeah, I mean, like Tom Scott, who is a fantastic YouTuber, and he's kind of in that space. Very big channel, very thoughtful guy. He just announced that he's sort of giving up YouTube. I don't think it's any one reason, but do think it's a confluence of factors. And I think I'm victim of some of those factors as well. I attribute my ability to navigate them better than some to the fact that I was kind of mature in the space before I embraced YouTube. I had a TV show on HBO that I starred in 10 years before I really found success on YouTube. I was mature when I entered the space. But, for a lot of these creators, their passion or their reason why they're there typically is not the fame, it's not the celebrity of it. It's the desire to create, it's the desire to share meaningful stuff. And there's all these secondary and tertiary aspects, these things that come along with being a creator that are wildly burdensome. And some are technical, like the fact that, maintaining it's undeniable. If you maintain consistent uploads, you will grow. And if you don't, you will not grow. I do not upload consistently. Like my subscriber count, which used to grow at, hundreds of thousands a month, has been stagnant. Like since I stopped, I still do great views, but it's been stagnant. And that burden is extremely heavy.
Did you stop intentionally?
Yeah, I stopped just because I stopped caring, not caring about the content. Not that I don't care about the content. I do incredibly care about the content. And not caring about my audience, I care very much about that. I stopped caring about the growth. I stopped caring about that ambition to be bigger.
Was there a point where you felt the daily pressure?
In a way that was like, I couldn't, I think for me, and this is just speaking about me, I was extremely naive to the fame aspect of it. Mm. Like there is no fame like YouTube fame, like internet fame. The best example of this is a friend of mine has a TV show on MTV called Catfish. And he and I, when Catfish was at like its peak and I was making YouTube videos every day, we'd go for runs together. And people would go like, oh, he's the dude from Catfish. And then they'd go, oh, Casey Neistat, how's your wife Candace? How's Francine, your little daughter?
I would say you cannot walk down a block in New York City without someone stopping Casey or saying hi to Casey.
It's wild.
It is really wild.
I've spent time on some different famous people in my life, and Casey's the one by far who gets stopped the most.
And it's different. If I hang around with friends that are actors, and it's like, oh, I loved you in that movie. They don't know an actor. I fucking love Brad Pitt in Fight Club. I don't know what he's like in real life.
I loved him on Dave.
I thought he was great on Dave, smashing his head against that wall.
That should be a great rec,
but
by the way.
There is this entitlement, which is a dirty word, and I don't mean it to be negative because I think it's not intentionally negative. I don't think it's intentionally malicious, but there is this sense of entitlement. I watch you, MrBeast, every video you post. I bought your sweatshirt. I buy your chocolate. I do all that. You owe me. And
interesting.
To be on the receiving end of that.
Is it heavy?
For me, I'm like, by the time I achieved that kind of fame, which was never sounds silly to say, but I never signed up for that. I loved it until that hit. And I was like, what is this? I was a dad. I'm like, almost a 40-year-old dad. And I was like, I don't want any of this.
How have you dealt with it?
This is the craziest thing to say. And very few people get this, but like, I have to be in New York City. It's the only place where I feel sane. New Yorkers respect it on a level. They say hi like they know you, and that's it.
Do you think that's why Taylor likes being in New York?
It could be. Like, New Yorkers don't give a shit. Like, somebody's funny tweeted the other day, like, everybody in New York's famous. Why should I give a shit about you? And there's such beauty to that. When you leave, like, this is a weird story I've never told publicly. We had a little house in Connecticut, Candace and I, like in this kind of like very middle-class town. It was a house we bought that was near the beach, and it was like $280,000. So it was a very like, the rich people of the town. They were like the dentist and the guy that owned the tire shop lived next to us. We loved it there. And when this internet fame kicked in, it just kept precipitating. And then I remember the final straw was after my daughter was born. At 9:30 at night, there was a knock at the door. like an aggressive knock. And like Candace goes upstairs with the baby. I'm like, got a baseball bat, and I like cautiously open the door. And it's a woman standing there. And she's like, can you take a picture with my son?
Oh my God.
And I was like, this is unbelievable. You woke my newborn daughter. This is so inappropriate. This is such a violation. And she was like, oh, come on, Casey. We're from around here. We're from around here. We know you. And it was like, I don't blame her. Like, I think that she wasn't doing it to be mean. She thought that was totally fine. And in New York City, it's people get it. But no, I don't deal with it well. I have this like, I'm fucking just railroading our conversation right now. But I have this like, the people that I admire the most are like the Quentin Tarantinos or the Tom Hanks or like Steve Carell, who's got to be one of the most, I've watched every episode of The Office 50 times. Like, if he's not out promoting a movie, if Quentin Tarantino doesn't have a new movie that he needs you to know, like, where's that guy? Who's he dating? Where does he live? What is he up to? I have no idea. And that is such an amazing thing that they can do their craft, which necessitates them being public figures without having to step into that murky world of fame and gossip.
I think one thing, we talk about parasocial relationships, and I feel like they exist with YouTube for sure. But I have to imagine podcasters have that to a degree that more so than other forms of entertainers, because you are in people's ears, you are with them in their home as you're with them in their car. You are, it's like you're in the movie Her, and I'd be curious if like already or as your podcast gets bigger, if people start having conversations with you as if you already know them.
But actually, it's funny. At the current scale, it's actually really cool. I think is the dynamic because right now, like in I think the Silicon Valley world, especially of people that are like 2 degrees removed, or people who have met them once or something, it seems like a lot of people are listening to it, and so you'll see someone like, I thought of you because I was listening to your podcast and I wanted to like pitch you this deal, or like, hey, like we have a friend Adrian who every time he sees me, he's like, Sam, I listen to every single episode, I love it. You're so wrong about everything, and I'm biking. I'm always biking and listening to you. And I get so angry because I'm like, oh, I have to tell Sam he's wrong about this, and then I finish my bike and I forget you were wrong about. Right? Like, it's actually great right now for that kind of relationship because it is kind of this extension with a lot of people you love, but you don't get to talk to all the time. But if they want to listen, it's there for them, and you kind of it actually creates moments. But I can imagine that that's because of the way this works right now, and maybe it won't always work that way.
I'm curious about people like Joe Rogan, love him or hate him. His numbers are 50 million. It's in the tens of millions. He's thousands of episodes, and his episodes are 3 hours long.
Yeah.
So if you have that in your ear, 3 hours a day for 10 years, it's not that you think you know him. You very literally know him. You know his mannerisms, his inflections. You know how he thinks, how he laughs. You know everything about this guy who doesn't know you exist. So when he enters the real world, whether that's coming to Jackson Hole to ski, ski, or walking down the street in Austin, Texas, or wherever, whatever he's doing, that is what he's surrounded. Like, how do you maintain sanity with that lopsided of a relationship with all of humanity?
Our brains are not. If you think about evolution, right? We would never meet, or we would never not meet someone that we knew about, right? Like we all kind of live in the same villages. And so biologically, when people, you'll see it, when people go up to a famous people, they short circuit. When people go up to like a famous person like Casey, like it's kind of like they don't know what to do. And I bet that you have techniques that you've developed to help them get through that short circuiting.
Oh, I'm so good at it. I'm so good
What
at
do you do?
I tried to once quantify how much of my life I've taken back with this one simple trick.
Oh, I think I know what you're going to say.
I watched you do this. Yeah, this is a great story. Yeah.
Okay, all anybody wants is the selfie. Number one, don't ever wait for them to ask. The minute they're approaching, give me your phone with a smile. And then like they're diffused and they're ready to go. And then number two, I always take the picture. Like there's no one on earth that's taking more selfies than me. Like, or I'm up there. You know what I mean? Like, I bet tell you, there's no chance.
She took selfies at her movie premiere.
Okay, good for her. Like, I took these fucking selfies on the gondola today. Like, so no matter what phone you give me, no matter what year Android it is, no matter what phone, I can get it to the selfie camera from a lock screen without knowing your password. Faster than you can figure out what you're doing there. And I take the picture and it's back in their hand. And then they're like, there's nothing else I want from you right now.
Mhm.
And then they walk away. And it's a very equitable transaction. They got something, they're psyched. Yeah, he's really nice. We took a selfie. What did you guys talk about? They're like, actually, we didn't really. It was like a blur. So like that's like something that is like it's a little bit of like reclaiming.
We should ask you about like Android market share in various places based on.
I know.
Yeah. My favorite is like these, and this is why like I'm obsessed with this topic. But like these really young kids, like 15 to 17-year-olds in New York, they come up with flip phones.
Oh, really?
Interesting.
Yeah, I've heard about this.
And I don't know how to
Which
use
kind
it.
of flip phone?
Yeah.
Like go to Verizon and they have an area in the store for really old people with like 4 phones.
I
That,
love it. I've tried
This
this.
is great
I love
news.
I
it.
want to know what Casey does when confronted with a flip phone.
well, first of all, I immediately like the person. I want to know them. And I want them in my life in some capacity. And I have the whole conversation. Are you on social media? It's like, I have an account. And it's like, how often do you check Instagram? It's like, I don't know. And it's like, I think it's private. And like, they have just no interest in it. And the way they look at us, like we're older millennials, but millennials is like, why would you want to put it all out there? And for me, it's like, there's something in that. Because I'm of the generation which is like, you put everything out there. Like, there's nothing more treasured than the validation of a double click on your picture. And these kids have rejected it wholesale. Like, they're going to show that, like, 1/3 of 1 megapixel flip phone photo of me, and they're going to show it to like 6 people, and they're going to show it to my young, like, check that out.
Yeah.
Like, that's when the power to send
Autograph.
What's
it.
interesting about that statement is that they still know YouTube.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a different.
They have computers, Dave.
Yeah, different.
Yeah.
No, I
There's
just
some
think
who don't have computers.
They have computers and a flip phone.
And also Casey's fame goes beyond YouTube.
But you guys, we all have little kids. Like, my kids don't differentiate what source the content's coming from.
No. True.
To them, there's no distinction between Disney Plus, YouTube, and Netflix.
There's no between TV, like, on a screen basis in their hand. Like, to them, it's just content.
It's all the same. It's just this rectangle, and it delivers me content. And I think that's true for kind of anyone younger than us.
What about TikTok? Both like in terms of trends, and we'll give Sam his 30-second talking point.
Every episode.
I agree with every word you say on TikTok, Sam. I'm sorry, Jessica.
Or as a platform for you as a creator, is it important? Do you use it?
I don't really use it. I consume it like a junkie. It's incredible. It does really destroys your brain in a way that is palpable. I think that what they've done that no one talks about is they've created the single greatest video creation tool set that anyone's ever done. The sorts of tools that I was telling YouTube you need to build for years. The sorts of tools that like Instagram's trying to catch up with and is still eons behind. Reels is like, not Reels, what's the YouTube Shorts? It's like, what are you doing? Like, yours feels like a 90s version of what they've built.
It's a flip phone version.
It's a flip phone, but that creation tool, which nobody puts any emphasis on, it means anyone can create anything. You want a green screen, you want digital effects, you want VFX, you want access to the best music, you want it to look like this, you want you can do anything with that. And there's not enough emphasis on that, but I think that's like a phenomenal driver. It lets people express themselves creatively without the burden of having to know how to operate the tools that typically stood in the way. That's the only part of TikTok that I like to talk about and that I praise. Because my beef with TikTok, I think, can probably be summed up as I don't think it's a platform for creativity. I think it's a platform for sensationalism, all the way through and through. The entire way you consume it, the way you interact with it, it has to be sensational to catch your eye, or you go straight past it.
Got it.
And I'll just make my plug, which is, all that aside, it's a huge national security risk.
I agree. It's Chinese spyware, and it should go away immediately.
And what about AI for both of you? So, I mean, maybe Casey, as a filmmaker and creator, how do you think about AI as creating a shit ton of potentially competitive content, and then also as a tool for you?
As a tool for me, and this is not like a neo-Luddite perspective, I think it's not. I don't know a use case where it's going to help me in a practical sense. I also have no affinity for any technology. I want the technology out of the way. all of my videos are just straight cuts, which is the same way that they cut movies 100 years ago. They use tape and I use Control-T. Like, it's the same thing. So I don't care. Like, as a creator, for me, it's uninteresting. Broadly, I think that it's going to just steamroll the bottom 90% of creators, because the bottom 90% of creators make content that's either, it's made to look like someone else's. They're sort of trying to emulate someone else. They don't know what to do. And it's just mediocre work. That's why, that it is what it is. And I think that AI can replace all that immediately. But what I think it does do is it elevates people who have a true perspective. And I think that elevation is going to be quick and strong and extremely meaningful. When AI co-ops so much of news sources, where can you turn that you can trust it? I trust that individual, that person. And when that happens with creativity, it's like, I think AI made this song. But then, like, if you see Drake and he's like, nah, it's my song, you have a greater appreciation for that. So for me as a creator, it's like, no, this is like a blessing. This is fantastic. It's going to like get all the noise out of there. And it's going to force me to focus on the one thing that I can do uniquely, because I have a unique perspective. Just like, every, musician or filmmaker or photographer who has a unique perspective, they will be valued more because everything else is going to turn to mush.
And Ricky, if you were like starting College Humor today with AI as it exists, would you do anything differently?
I'd probably use it as a tool. And being in the partnerships org, like, we think about how to empower creators with AI. So, an example, my colleague, the wonderful Eva Chen, who's a big fashion person and a great person, she gets asked the same question 10 times a day, which is like, which Apple Watch band do you have? Right? Because everyone sees it and they want to know. And like, she doesn't have time to respond to everybody, and you would leave some fans hanging and they want their question answered, it's not answered. But like with AI, like, you can solve that problem, and the viewer can get their question answered. Eva can gain maybe another fan or viewer, and it's a win-win. And of course the viewer knows that it's an AI that's responding because Eva is. So those type of things that we look at and think like, what are the pain points for creators now, and how does AI solve those, rather than some like wholesale reimagining of the entire ecosystem, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the toolie type stuff, like the totally, like, I know it's not real, just transactional. The FAQ of Eva Chen, right, makes total sense, right? And like, fine, you make it a little bit better. I think there is value in that. The funny thing to me about what Casey's saying is, like, it just feels to me like in every step, it is a flood the zone thing, which just washes away values. Like, take special effects. Star Wars, unbelievable, right? Like, it's like an amazing moment of like, now it's like we're all just like completely desensitized to it. It's irrelevant. Like, no one even cares. It's like, yes, it's like more AI stuff, right? More FBFX. I think it's the same thing with, like, interestingly, with one-on-one chat conversations. Is, if you think about it, like right now, I just went through an experience with this when I was working on the Harvard Overseer stuff that I've been working on, where it's like the unbelievable power of personal outreach, right? It's unbelievable power because it's expensive, because like, oh my God, you actually did the outreach. Like, that is a huge engine. The second is like, I think this is fake, right? Then like, you just wash that all out. Everyone's like, it's just more like personalized stuff, like whatever. And so like, I do think it's an interesting thing of just like washing out spots of value, and then where that kind of reoccurs, assuming that AI, the same thing with like, we can't trust images. The VFX I'm totally desensitized to. I'm going to get desensitized to one-on-one conversations. It's all just stuff, right?
But what about when AI gets so good that you can't tell?
Well, then the problem becomes, the biggest problem becomes that when you actually do want to invest and have that conversation, you can't, the proof of humanness becomes impossible.
But what if it's one to many? So if like, I told you guys I've been playing with this new thing called HeyGen, which has raised a lot of venture capital funding. And I made an AI avatar of me, talking like me, inflections like me, all of the things. It's not perfect yet, but it's like 60% there. It's going to get closer. And if I want to do like a one-to-many, just like demo video of something that I'm showing how to do, or like explaining how to start a business to a group of female founders, like, would they know?
I think at scale, it will completely devalue your ability to do that with value, because you'll just be like, it's just more AI Britty stuff. Now
but they wouldn't know it's AI Britty stuff.
But they will actually oversample, because once you realize it's possible, you're just going to just assume that it's all fake, right? And I think that'll create this really weird dynamic where the authenticity, the real, maybe becomes in person. Maybe the flip phone kids are like, no, I want to hang out with Brit in person. Because like, I get that it's just, even when you're like actually being authentic and telling a story and investing in this, if it looks too real, you're just like,
To Ricky's point, like sometimes they just want answers on how to do
Well, that's
something
what I'm
and they
saying.
want to talk in
And
head.
then just say, here's my FAQ.
the transactional version I'm totally down with. It's like, what is this? What? Fine. Like, like I need a specific answer. I think it's more like right now we use our investment and our personalities and like who we are. Like, when you say like, I'm going to have a meeting with someone, I'm going to call you. That's actually like you putting chips on the table. Like that's a personal investment. And then people are like, oh, because you invested, I'll invest with you. And there's a dynamic there. The second, like, I'm not actually putting chips on the table. It's just like free stuff, right? Because it's AI based. I think it creates this weird thing where like the problem might be that it works for a little while and then everyone just becomes like like VFX or just blind to it. I don't know.
This is a good Sam Brit debate. I like it. So virtual Brit, but like
Not 100% virtual Brit, but supplementing AI Brit with real Brit. I think a lot of creators are going to do this.
I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think, sure. I think you nailed it when you said in a transactional capacity, but I think the totality of it is going to be nearly impossible for this generation to overcome. So you said it's not 100% you, but it's 60% you. So maybe in 2 years, they'll get it to be like 80% you. And then they'll get it to 90%, then 95%, then 97%. They're never going to close that gap. And a good example of that is YouTube and YouTubers. Like our bullshit censors have gotten so refined because 90% of the 99%, they're full of shit. I'm watching them talk about how much they fucking love their job or how much they like this or how much they enjoy like whatever thing they're promoting. I can see the bullshit. Through the screen, I can see the bullshit. And as to Sam's point, like if you flood it, our bullshit sensors just become more and more refined. And like now in the real world, largely because of going back to like this celebrity and fame, my own bullshit sensor for people is so refined that my personality has changed in the last 5 years. I've gone from being a gregarious, open person. I am so skeptical of everyone because I can tell as you're approaching me that you're full of shit. And I might be wrong.
You've been oversampled.
I definitely oversampled. But like I've become so refined at that because I've had so many faces in my face. I've had so many of these interactions, way more than any human should ever have, that my bullshit sensor is so refined. And I think ultimately we put such value on true human-to-human interactions that we're just going to get better at.
Well, and the cynical version, which I think does relate back to this TikTok thing, is the pure dopamine. It doesn't matter, right? So if you just the pure dopamine hit feed, right? Like it's just that's sensational. It's TikTok. You're like, I don't even care if it's real or not. It's just fucking funny. Fine, right? But then that really pulls apart those two.
Look, you do really interesting things for the porn space.
That's my
We've already talked about that. I'm just going to leave. I think that educational content,
Great example.
Cooking videos, like DIY video, that can be AI and people won't care because they want I want to see how they baked the pie. I don't fucking care if she's AI or not.
Totally.
Like,
but you also don't even care. Like,
but that's a big portion of what's on YouTube and what's on Instagram and what's on TikTok.
Yeah,
and so I do think like a lot of those creators, will. Well, I don't know if they'll be wiped out or they are supplementing with AI to grow their following in their channels in other ways, right?
Yeah, or it's like there's so many chefs out there. Why do we like Gordon Ramsay? Like, what is it about? I don't know that he's a better cook than he's never cooked for me, but I watch all of his shows. They're great. Why? He represents like a kind of humanity that I subscribe to. Him, that guy, not because of, I think an interesting thing too is what's the like FaceTime called on the new Apple ski goggles?
The Vision Pro.
I think that's what it's called.
So everybody, and like everybody's shitting on it. And I saw somebody took a really interesting take because they create this uncanny cartoon version of yourself, and then that's what they will report. Like they'll send that to Zoom, being like, "This is our video feed," and it's not. It's this fake version of you. And I would rather have like Sam in his car with his phone right here, where I see half of his face and he's driving. I'd rather have that than this perfect cartoon fake version of him. That's not Sam.
There's also no information. It's like it's
There's
information destroying.
That's exactly right.
It's like I think what it comes down to is like It's when you abstract all this stuff and it all starts looking the same, right? It becomes this war of attrition where like there's no information in any of it, right? Which is why I'd much the more raw. So I think to your flip phone point, I really think that it might be even beyond like the cool kids. I think there's this thing where obviously the world will be flooded with the content. Obviously there's some transactional value to it. I'm not saying, but I could totally imagine this like steampunk future, right? Where everyone's just like, like fuck it, like we're gonna like, read paper newspapers and whatever.
Most of the when I do,
you might be able to sell some paper.
Sam, once a year, he's like, I got a brilliant idea for the information.
when I do titles, like for my videos, like one of my favorite things to do is just film a piece of paper and I'm writing it. Because like anyone can take a font face. Anyone can click a button in any app and have it animate. And it means nothing to anyone.
Think about the success of like Dude with Sign, right?
Yeah, exactly.
He just put forth the effort to write it on a piece of cardboard and hold it up. And or like how many times you'll see a photo of something clever written on a coffee board, a coffee house sign outside the shop. Like you could just tweet it, but no, there's something about like
it's social economics. It's basically people like there's a whole economy of how much did you actually invest in something, and therefore how do I interact with it and feel with it, which like people to Casey's point, I think are subconsciously unbelievably sophisticated at, right? And so the more you understand that, and that's why I think the AI stuff is so interesting, is you're basically just gonna take a bunch of stuff that was expensive and make it so cheap that no one cares about it.
Yeah, I had a lecture that I used to give called Perfection Erases Humanity. And it was largely directed at CGI when it was exploding a dozen years ago, which is that we can now make everything perfect. And in that perfection, there's no sign of the human hand. And therefore, our relationship with it starts to fall apart.
And for what's I think like Tom Cruise with his crazy stunts, I think that's actually part of the story there. Where he's like, the whole story is always Tom Cruise does all these crazy fucking stunts and learns all this stuff to do. And you know what? That does make the movies more compelling because then you watch like Aquaman and it's just like overwhelming bullshit, right?
No, embrace the limitations of the real world. Like the behind the scenes 3-minute video of him launching that motorcycle off that
so good.
Was infinitely superior into the final shot in the movie where they painted out the ramp and they made it was CGI. I didn't believe it. I didn't trust it. I had nothing invested in that. When I watched that 3-minute trailer, I was like, holy shit, Tom Cruise is a madman and I love every second of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we got to slowly we got to bring things to a close. Now, let's end with a pop culture corner. We've kind of all been pop culture corner
PCC.
here, but a PCC.
Yeah.
Brett, you've got 2 lieutenants here. So I think every PCC, we try to just plant a nugget, some recommendations, something you are intrigued by, something you think the audience should be paying attention to.
Am I asking them for their PCC?
No, we're asking you all.
I think I'm just being excluded.
Yeah. Sam is never part of the PCC.
You're welcome to participate. I learned about a water bottle,
Sam
but I don't
knows some
remember
things
what I'm
about
supposed
pop
to say
culture.
about it.
Okay, well, the Grammys are happening this weekend, and this episode will be released by then. So I would like to know if there are any hot takes or predictions on what's going to happen at the Grammys. Taylor is performing, by the way.
I have no.
Are you talking to us?
I thought you were going to give us a hot take on pop culture.
Does anyone watch the Grammys?
Everyone's so focused on the Super Bowl.
All
but
right.
the Grammys is like,
I'll give you softer ball.
I agree with Sam. I agree with Sam. When I saw she was performing, I was like, oh, that's like kind of below.
It's kind of dépassé.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, softball. Niners versus Chiefs. Who wins? Do you watch football?
Yes, I do.
Like,
Or are you watching Taylor?
So I think like you want like the storybook ending, and that is the Chiefs winning.
Yeah, Chiefs by 6.
Never.
By 6. Okay.
Because I mean, think about it this way: like any couple that's been together a few months, the chance of them breaking up in the next 2 weeks is like, I don't know, 5%. There's a 0% chance that this couple breaks up. Like, so like, it's almost like destined to end that way.
Well, I think it also goes beyond the Taylor thing. It's like the Mahomes, Kelsey
Are
thing.
you turning up Purdy? What are you doing?
Well, the Mahomes Kelsey thing is a really amazing story, right? Like we haven't seen something like this maybe since Montana Rice. Like it's a really amazing story. I think everybody wants it to have the storybook ending. Purdy's new. I think it's a great Cinderella story. You know, it would be awesome if Purdy won, but he's also got a lot of years ahead of him, right? I'm definitely a 49ers fan, but I do think that the sort of Mahomes-Kelsey story, it seems like Kelsey might retire pretty soon. You know, it could be the last hurrah.
I do love that I literally just had a moment where I understood about a third of the words.
Sam, this segment is for you, actually. It's not even for the audience. It's just for you.
And it's more meaningful because it's not an AI teaching me about pop culture.
Yes,
Sure. The humanity, it feels human.
Teacher.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks for the strawberry.
Yeah. Hey, you can take 2 if you want when you leave.
Appreciate it.
You were extra awesome today.
So we also want to thank our audience for tuning in every week, for watching. I got a plug.
For coming up to us and talking to us.
Try to remember what you're going to yell at me about.
I also have to plug, actually, apropos of this combo, this week the information announced the dates for our Creator Economy Summit, one of our biggest events of the year in Los Angeles. And I believe I saw on Instagram from our team that our early bird tickets are almost out. But anyway, giving us a lot of good fodder.
Oh, and this episode is brought to you by Unicorn Picnic
and Shred.
And
two
Shred.
of our friends who have awesome outdoor ski and winter athletic brands. Lindsay
Yeah, the
Dyer,
Shred goggles are actually, you know, people have been asking us for more gear reviews as well.
Oh, yeah, we're going to start a new
What
segment.
Ted Ligety has done with Shred is really cool. Like, they worked with MIT, they used some AI, they figured out a new goggles lens that really does work in low light and works in bright light. And you only need one lens, which I think is a really cool new innovation.
Sam wears them.
I do. Although I was almost banned from running today because I looked too silly.
When are we going to get affiliate links for our show notes? We need to get on that.
Yeah, we have a lot to get on.
Yeah.
I think it's
Long
fine.
to-do
Here's some other
list.
things to do.
Thank you guys for being here.
Thanks for having us.
We'll
Yes,
see you guys next week on More or Less.
See ya.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this show, please leave us a virtual high five by rating it and reviewing it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Find more information about each episode in the show notes and follow us on social media by searching for @MoreOrLess, @DaveMorin, @Lesson, @JLesson, and as for me, I'm @Brit. See you guys next time.